My name is Elizabeth Carter, and I was born 28 years ago in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've always believed that there are days in life that define us, days when the world tilts slightly, revealing things you never expected to see. I just never imagined that one of those days would be my wedding day. The morning began like a scene from a carefully directed film. The sky was painted in soft pastels, and the trees around the chapel danced gently in the breeze, their branches swaying like they, too, were preparing for something grand. I stood in the bridal suite, wrapped in a silk robe, staring out the window at the little white chapel where everything was supposed to unfold perfectly. The chapel was tucked into a clearing surrounded by tall pines and whispering oaks, the kind of place that felt both sacred and timeless. Everything about it had been chosen with care. The bouquet I would carry was made of blush garden roses, pale ranunculus, and sprays of baby's breath, delicate, romantic, and intentional, just like the life I had spent 2 years building with Adam Reynolds. My dress hung on a carved wooden hanger behind me, lace spilling delicately across the shoulders, with a soft train that I had dreamed of since I was a little girl. It was the kind of dress that made you want to hold your breath when you saw it. My reflection in the mirror didn't quite look like me, it looked like someone pulled from the pages of a bridal magazine, glowing, flawless, hopeful. Adam was everything I ever wanted in a man. He was steady and kind, his mind always a few thoughtful steps ahead. An architect in Atlanta, he built homes the way most people built memories, with love, detail, and permanence. We met at a symposium on sustainable architecture. I had been there to support a friend, and he was one of the speakers. After his talk, he approached me, asked what I thought of his design choices, and I told him the truth, that his buildings felt like places where stories could begin. He smiled and said, "That's the point." From that moment on, I was caught in his gravity. He proposed to me in a botanical garden, under a dome of climbing roses and lantern light. The ring he offered had once belonged to his grandmother, an oval sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. He didn't need grand gestures. Just his voice, steady and full of promise, saying, "Let's build something together." I said yes with tears in my eyes and laughter in my throat. So today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Our families had come together the night before for the rehearsal dinner, laughter echoing through the vineyard hall we had rented. My father had toasted to new beginnings, and Adam's mother had clasped my hands in hers and whispered how lucky she felt to have me joining the family. Everything had gone as planned. Everything had felt right. In the bridal suite, my mother helped secure the final pearl-tipped pins in my hair. My bridesmaids floated around me in dresses of soft sage green, adjusting their bouquets and sipping champagne with nervous glee. My heart pounded in my chest, not with fear, but with the weight of joy. The music started, faintly at first, signaling that the ceremony had begun. My cue was moments away. The doors would open. I would walk down the aisle. Adam would be waiting at the altar in his charcoal gray suit, the one I helped him choose. We would exchange vows we had written ourselves. We had practiced them together in whispers, late at night, heads resting on shared pillows. They were honest, tender, full of the small promises that matter most. The chapel had filled with those who loved us, childhood friends, college roommates, colleagues, and cousins. They sat shoulder to shoulder on the wooden pews, the soft flicker of candlelight dancing along the stained glass. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the hush of anticipation. There was music, there was warmth, there was every reason to believe this day would be perfect. Then came the signal. It was time. I stepped into the hallway with my father, his arm strong beneath mine. He looked at me and said, "You look like your mother did on our wedding day. Maybe even more beautiful." I smiled at him, the emotion catching in my throat. The chapel doors opened slowly. Everyone rose. 100 eyes turned toward me. At the end of the aisle, Adam waited. His eyes met mine. He smiled. And everything felt exactly as it should. Or so I thought. The chapel was filled with soft light, filtered through the stained glass windows in hues of gold, crimson, and sapphire. I took each step down the aisle slowly, as if savoring the moment. My heart swelled with emotion, and I felt the weight of every eye on me, their collective gaze a mixture of warmth, admiration, and curiosity. When I reached the altar, Adam took my hands in his. His palms were slightly damp. I smiled at him, assuming it was just nerves. After all, weddings make even the calmest people tremble a little. The priest welcomed everyone and began the ceremony with a few words about love, unity, and trust. Adam's mother wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. My father stood tall, proud. My best friend gave me a subtle thumbs up from the front row. Everything moved forward just as we had rehearsed, until it didn't. When the priest invited us to exchange vows, Adam hesitated. At first, it was barely noticeable. A half-second too long before stepping forward. Then, instead of reaching into his jacket pocket for his written vows like we'd planned, he reached for the microphone. That wasn't part of our ceremony. I frowned slightly, unsure. Maybe he had changed something last minute? Maybe he wanted to say something more spontaneous? He cleared his throat, eyes locked on the wooden floor beneath us. Then, slowly, he looked up, scanning the pews, as if searching for someone. A flicker of discomfort passed through his features. The chapel quieted. Even the children, squirming a moment before, fell still. Then he spoke. I can't do this. At first, I thought I had misheard. A murmur swept through the guests. The priest, who had begun to lower his book to cue the next line, froze. I can't keep lying, Adam continued, his voice trembling. Not to her. Not to any of you. My hand slipped from his without even realizing it. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice low, careful, suddenly very aware that every ear in the chapel was tuned to us. Adam took a deep breath, the kind you take before plunging into something dark and cold. There's something I need to say, he said. And I need everyone to hear it. Especially you, Elizabeth. My stomach turned. The music had stopped long ago, and the silence that filled the space now was not peaceful, it was tight, breathless, expectant. I looked at the priest, who looked just as stunned as I felt. Adam, I whispered, trying to keep my voice from shaking, what's going on? He gripped the microphone tighter. I can't marry you without telling the truth first. I've kept something from you. And from everyone here. I didn't come to this day honestly, and that's not fair to you. My mind raced, heart hammering now, not with joy, but with dread. My first instinct was that he had cheated. My second was worse, that he was sick, that something was about to change our lives forever. But even those guesses couldn't prepare me for what came next. He paused again. Looked out into the crowd. Eyes moving from face to face. And then the silence deepened. A kind of silence I'd never felt before. A silence that lived in the marrow. Like the world was holding its breath with me. I stood there frozen, still holding on to the remnants of a moment that had already slipped through my fingers. The lace of my dress clung to my skin, suddenly too tight, as if the fabric itself could feel my confusion. Adam's words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't make sense of them. I looked at him, really looked at him now, and saw something I had never noticed before. Not fear exactly, more like guilt. Deep, rooted, corrosive guilt. I need to be honest before anything else happens, he said again, louder this time, voice more stable. I didn't come here today just to say I do. I came to finally stop pretending. My eyes scanned the guests, searching their faces for a clue. Some looked at Adam with concern, others with curiosity. My mother was gripping the pew in front of her. My father had stepped forward slightly, like he was preparing to intervene. My bridesmaids had gone pale. And then Adam did it again, he searched the crowd. Like he was waiting for something. Or someone. What are you looking for? I asked, my voice just above a whisper, not even sure he would answer. He didn't look at me. Not right away. His gaze lingered in the middle section of the chapel. I followed his eyes. The seats were full, faces puzzled, lips murmuring. Then his breath caught. His shoulders squared slightly. He had found whoever he was looking for. Elizabeth, he said, there's someone here who deserves to be acknowledged. The words dropped like a stone in still water. He opened his mouth to continue, but someone else beat him to it. A voice, sharp, unmistakable, cut through the air. Enough, Adam. I turned my head so quickly it hurt. In the center row, a woman stood. She looked around 35, with dark brown hair pulled into a low bun and eyes that didn't blink. She wore a navy blue dress and a stare that belonged to someone who had waited far too long for this moment. Her voice carried authority. It wasn't angry, but it shook with something older than rage. It shook with truth. "I'm the one he's been pretending doesn't exist," she said. I didn't recognize her. Not a flicker of memory. Not even the vague sense that we might have met at a party or on the street. She was a stranger. But her eyes were locked on mine as if I were the one who owed her answers. "My name is Lauren," she said. "And this man standing in front of you? He's not who you think he is." A collective gasp rippled through the room. The air grew impossibly heavy. The priest looked at me, then at Adam, helpless. I stared at the woman. Lauren. My throat was dry. My heart was pounding. "Who are you?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She took a step forward. Then another. Her shoes clicked on the floor, echoing in the silence. "You don't know me," she said, "but you should." Beside me, Adam went pale. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't deny her presence. He just stood there, silent, ashamed. And in that moment, I knew. This was not going to be a wedding. It was going to be something else entirely. Lauren stood there, centered in the aisle like the eye of a storm, her presence impossible to ignore. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She looked at me with a steadiness that made my spine go cold. Around us, the guests sat paralyzed, unsure if they were witnessing a mistake, a betrayal, or the unraveling of something far more complex than anyone could have expected. My hands hung uselessly at my sides. I looked at Adam, expecting him to deny it all, to take control, to tell me this was some misunderstanding. But he didn't move. His face was frozen. And that told me more than words could. Lauren took another step forward. "You don't recognize me, Elizabeth. I know that. You're not supposed to." He made sure of it. "What are you doing?" Adam asked finally, his voice cracking. He wasn't angry. He was pleading. She ignored him. "I wasn't invited, of course," she said. "I had to find out through someone else. Someone who thought I deserved to know that the man I once built a life with was about to stand at an altar and pretend none of it ever happened." The shock was spreading like ink in water. People shifted in their seats, whispering. Someone stood near the back, uncertain whether to leave or stay. "You built a life with him?" I asked. My voice sounded foreign. Too calm for the thunder in my chest. She nodded, never breaking eye contact with me. "Yes. Years ago. It wasn't some fling. It wasn't some college phase he forgot to mention. We lived together. We planned a future. I was the woman he said he wanted to marry. Until one day, he disappeared." She turned slightly, facing the crowd. No note. No call. Nothing. He just vanished. The room held its breath again. I could feel my skin pulling tight across my bones, as if my body were bracing for some kind of impact. "I didn't come here to destroy your day, Elizabeth. I didn't even come for revenge," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "I came because I couldn't let him erase the truth. I came because he promised me something once, something sacred, and then he ran." The chapel was utterly still, except for the sound of her heels against the tile as she stepped closer. "You have no idea who he really is," she said. "You think this man beside you is safe, honest, dependable. I did too. Until he walked out of my life and never looked back." I turned to Adam. He wouldn't look at me. "She's not lying, is she?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. He still didn't speak. His silence was its own confession. Then Lauren said the one thing I wasn't prepared for. He told me he could never marry someone while pretending to be someone else. That was his excuse for leaving me. But here he is, about to do it again. I felt the weight of every word. The betrayal. The years of secrets. The ceremony unraveling thread by thread. And suddenly, the aisle between us felt like a canyon. The priest stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable, his voice hesitant. Perhaps we should pause the ceremony, let the families know, Lauren cut in, her tone sharp but controlled. This isn't just about family. This is about the truth. I was still standing at the altar, dress trailing behind me like a relic from another life, hands trembling slightly as I clutched the edge of the podium for balance. The veil felt too heavy, like it was weighing down my thoughts, blurring my vision more than it softened anything. I pulled it back without ceremony. I looked straight at Lauren. Tell me exactly who you are. She didn't blink. My name is Lauren Whitaker. I met Adam 8 years ago. We fell in love fast, hard, and completely. Within 6 months, we were living together in Charleston. We talked about everything, marriage, children, a future built from scratch. I thought I had found the person I would spend the rest of my life with. A painful tightness grew in my chest. My legs felt stiff, uncooperative. I didn't want to believe her, but something in the way she spoke told me this wasn't a performance. She wasn't here for drama. She wasn't faking anything. She was here because someone had silenced her for too long. Then, she continued, he started changing. Avoiding conversations. Coming home later. And one morning, I woke up and he was gone. His phone was disconnected. His office told me he had resigned. He left everything behind without a single word. She turned her eyes on Adam. I waited for you. I searched. I called your mother. She said she hadn't spoken to you in weeks. That's when I realized you had vanished on purpose. Adam finally raised his eyes to meet hers. Lauren. I was scared. She let out a bitter laugh. You weren't scared. You were a coward. He said nothing. I turned back to him. You told me you'd never been close to marrying anyone before. I didn't lie to hurt you, he said, his voice tight. I didn't know how to explain. It all fell apart, and I ran. I thought it was the only way. The only way to what? I snapped, the calm unraveling. To start over with someone new? To pretend none of it ever happened? The crowd was silent, holding back gasps and quiet tears. I could feel eyes on me, pitying, sympathetic, maybe even ashamed on my behalf. Lauren stepped forward again, her voice softer now. I'm not here to humiliate you, Elizabeth. I just couldn't let him do to you what he did to me. I know what it's like to love someone who's lying. And I couldn't let that happen again. The priest quietly closed his book. There would be no more vows today. I felt dizzy. Numb. My thoughts were moving faster than I could catch them. Was our entire relationship a lie? Or had I just never seen the full picture? I had so many questions and not a single answer. And Lauren, this woman I had never met before, seemed to know the man I thought I was going to marry better than I ever had. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a collapsing bridge. One moment I had been walking confidently toward the future, and now the planks beneath my feet were cracking, one by one, as the weight of unspoken truths dragged everything down. I turned toward Adam. His shoulders had sunk, and the confident man I thought I knew was nowhere in sight. Talk to me, I said. No more pauses. No more silence. Say what you should have said years ago. He took a shaky breath, one hand still gripping the edge of the podium as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. Her name is Lauren Whitaker. We were together for almost 3 years. We lived in Charleston. We were close to getting married. I waited, frozen. It was real, he said quietly. But something happened. Something I didn't know how to handle. He turned slightly toward the guests as if offering his words to the entire room. I got scared. Not of her. Of myself. Of what I had become. My father always told me that failure, personal failure, would destroy everything. My reputation, my future, my career. And when things started falling apart, I believed him. So I disappeared. I stared at him, trying to understand the logic. Falling apart? You left without a word. That's not falling apart. That's abandoning someone. I know, he said, voice breaking. I know what I did. I never tried to explain because I didn't think I deserved to. I thought if I buried it deep enough, I could start again. I met you, Elizabeth, and you were light. You were everything I wasn't. You made me want to be better. But you never told me the truth, I said, the weight of betrayal pressing harder with each word. I thought I could leave the past behind, he whispered. I thought I could build something new without looking back. And yet here we are, Lauren said from behind me, her voice neither angry nor vindicated. Just tired. Truth doesn't stay buried, Adam. You of all people should know that. He turned to her slowly, nodding. You're right. I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving. For staying silent. She didn't respond. Her eyes were wet, but her face remained composed. Then she looked at me. You don't know half of what he's hiding. Her words pierced the thick silence like a cold blade. I felt the air shift again, sharper now, laced with something unspoken. What does that mean? I asked, staring at her, then at him. What else? Lauren took a step forward, hesitant this time, her posture a mixture of restraint and urgency. I didn't come here just to expose the past. I came because there's more. Something you deserve to know before you make any choice. Something that changes everything. The guests were no longer whispering. They were just watching, silent, still, drawn into something far beyond a ruined ceremony. Adam didn't speak. His silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. That was the moment I realized the heartbreak wasn't finished. It was only beginning. I stepped away from the altar, the sound of my heels dull against the polished floor, and pushed open the chapel doors without looking back. The air outside was thick with the scent of flowers and the hum of distant summer insects, but none of it calmed me. I barely noticed the guests murmuring behind me, or the gasps that followed as I disappeared into the garden behind the church. I just needed space to breathe, to process, to feel something other than betrayal. My fingers trembled as I leaned against a low stone wall, my dress spilling around me like a puddle of everything I had once believed in. I felt the tightness of my corset, the cold press of the ring still on my finger, the eerie silence of a day that had veered so far from its path it felt like I'd woken in someone else's life. I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me, deliberate, careful. Elizabeth. It was Lauren. I turned slowly, not angry anymore, just tired. I didn't speak, didn't gesture, just waited. She stopped a few steps away, clutching her hands together like she wasn't sure if she was allowed this closeness. I'm sorry, she said. For the way it happened. I never wanted it to be like this. Then why now? I asked, the edge still there in my voice. Why today? Because today was the last chance, she replied. After this, it would be too late. Too late for what? She hesitated, her mouth pressed into a tight line. I didn't come here to punish him. I came because I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent any longer. What else? I asked. You said I didn't know half of what he's hiding. Tell me the rest. She looked away for a moment, gathering strength. After Adam left me, I was destroyed. I thought I'd done something wrong, that maybe I hadn't been enough. I didn't understand why someone would vanish like that unless they were escaping something, or someone. She looked back at me, and her voice dropped. But then, weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Everything stopped. The air, the sounds of the world, my own heartbeat. I had no way of telling him. I didn't even know where he was. I debated calling his family, but I didn't trust them anymore. I didn't want to be humiliated twice. My lips parted, but no words came out. I had a son, she said. His name is Noah. He's 5 years old now. I stared at her, my mouth dry. Adam has a child? She nodded. Yes. He's never met him. He doesn't even know what his voice sounds like. I told myself for a long time that maybe it was better that way. That he didn't deserve to know. But then I saw your engagement in an announcement, and I realized I couldn't let another woman step into the same shadow I did. I didn't know what to feel: rage, sorrow, betrayal, confusion. All of it swirled inside me like a storm I couldn't escape. Behind us, the chapel doors remained closed. The ceremony was dead. But something far more real had just been born. And I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I stared at Lauren, her words ringing louder in the silence than the church bells that had yet to chime. A son. A 5-year-old boy. A child born from a love Adam had buried so deep he'd managed to walk away from it like it had never existed. The shock of it held me still, even as my heart kicked like thunder inside my chest. You're saying he's never seen the boy? Never even asked? She shook her head. No. I never gave him the chance. I was angry. And scared. I didn't want to force someone to be a father who had already chosen to vanish. I raised Noah on my own. But lately, he started asking questions. I imagined a small boy, brown hair, maybe Adam's eyes, looking up at Lauren and asking why all the other kids had a dad. Asking why his didn't come around. The image was unbearable. Something clenched painfully inside me, and I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't just about a ruined wedding or a shattered trust. This was about a life, a small, innocent life, being shaped in the absence of truth. Lauren took a cautious step closer. I didn't come to make demands. I'm not here to drag him into court or ruin his future. I came because I thought, if someone was going to marry him, if someone was going to build a life with him, she should know the entire truth first. My hand went instinctively to my stomach. There was nothing there, of course, no child, no future taking shape, but the instinct was fierce, protective, maternal in a way I hadn't expected. I had dreamed of children with Adam. Of late nights and bedtime stories, of dancing around the kitchen with a baby in my arms while he watched, smiling. I had imagined that future down to the color of the nursery walls. Now all I could think about was the child he had already left behind. I need to hear it from him, I said. Lauren nodded, stepping back as I turned and walked toward the chapel. My legs felt heavy, but my resolve didn't falter. I opened the doors to find the room still caught in that breathless pause, the guests stunned into an unnatural quiet. Adam stood alone at the altar, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, eyes fixed on the floor. When he looked up and saw me, he straightened, but there was no strength in it. Is it true? I asked, not needing to explain. My voice cut clean through the hush. His lips parted, but he didn't speak. Do you have a son, Adam? He nodded, slowly. Yes. The confirmation didn't land like an explosion. It settled like ash, soft but devastating. My vision blurred for a moment, not from tears, but from the sheer pressure of everything collapsing inside me. You knew she was pregnant and left anyway? His eyes flickered. She didn't tell me. Not then. I didn't know until, much later. And you still stayed away? My voice cracked. You knew, and you didn't go back? He rubbed a hand over his face, as if trying to wipe the shame from it. My father, he found out before I did. He made it very clear what would happen if anyone knew. The firm was barely mine then. Everything I had built was tied to his approval. He said the scandal would ruin everything. I took a slow step forward, my hands clenched. So you chose your reputation over your child? He didn't argue. He didn't even try. I was young. I was terrified. I thought if I just shut it out, it would stay in the past. That I could make it up somehow with a better future. With me, I whispered. He looked up, eyes shining with tears he didn't bother to hide. Yes. With you. And now? I asked. What would you have done if she hadn't shown up today? If she hadn't stood up and spoken for the child you chose to forget? He hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. I wanted to tell you, he said. I just didn't know how. I turned to the priest, who was still frozen near the altar. There won't be a wedding today. The words were calm, almost too calm. The priest nodded slowly. The guests sat in stunned silence. No one moved. No one whispered now. It was as if the gravity of the moment had pulled all sound from the room. I walked past Adam without another word. I didn't touch him. I didn't look back. Outside, Lauren waited. He admitted it, I said. He confirmed everything. She nodded. I'm sorry. I want to meet him, I said suddenly. Noah. I want to meet him. Lauren blinked, taken aback. You want to meet him? If there's a child caught in the middle of this, I won't be another adult who pretends he doesn't matter. Her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Hope. And maybe a little disbelief. Are you sure? No, I said. But I think he deserves to be seen. And maybe, in some strange way, so did I. The ride back to the house where I had gotten ready that morning was quiet. The makeup artist's tools were still scattered across the vanity, a glass of untouched champagne stood sweating beside a wilting bouquet, and the air carried the weight of a celebration that never came. I sat alone on the edge of the bed, still in the dress, still in the shoes, trying to make sense of the version of reality that had replaced my own. A soft knock interrupted the stillness. When I opened the door, Adam was there. I didn't invite him in. I just stood there, the doorway between us like a drawn line neither of us could quite cross. I didn't expect you to come here, I said. I had to. You deserve the truth, all of it. No more filters. His eyes were raw, like he hadn't stopped crying. Or maybe like he hadn't allowed himself to start until it was too late. I'm listening, I said. He leaned against the doorframe, not stepping in. I found out about Noah almost a year after I left Lauren. My father intercepted a letter, one she sent to my old office, and he confronted me before I even opened it. He told me it was a trap. That she just wanted to ruin me. That if I went back, I'd lose everything. I didn't interrupt. I let him unravel it. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to. I was already dealing with the fallout of walking away from her. The guilt. The cowardice. And then the idea of a child, it felt too big, too final. He said the scandal would destroy my future. So I did nothing. I stayed silent. And when we met? I asked, voice steady but tight. I was a different person by then. Or at least, I pretended to be. You gave me something I didn't think I deserved, a clean slate. I kept telling myself I'd make things right somehow. That I'd figure out how to deal with it. But then we got serious, and it became harder to explain the omission without destroying everything we had. You chose comfort over courage, I said, not accusing, just stating what had become so painfully clear. He nodded. I thought I could build a better version of myself with you, he continued. But the truth I left behind followed me. And today, it caught up. There was a pause. A long one. And then, very quietly, I asked, do you love him? Adam looked down. I don't know him. I've never heard him laugh. I've never held him. But I think about him every day. And that guilt, it's like a hum that never goes quiet. I let that sit for a moment. He's not just a memory or a mistake, Adam. He's a person. He's a child growing up wondering why his father disappeared. I know, he said. That's what I'm trying to fix now. I stepped back, slowly closing the door between us. You should start with him. Not me. I sat back on the edge of the bed after he left, the silence returning, but different this time. It was no longer empty. It echoed with consequences, with things unsaid for too long. For the first time in hours, I didn't cry. I just breathed. The chapel hadn't emptied. Hours had passed, yet some guests lingered, uncertain, caught between disbelief and the delicate unraveling of a day they'd expected to be joyful. The floral arrangements remained untouched at the altar, a silent reminder of everything that was supposed to happen. I returned not to reclaim the moment, but to confront it, one last time. As I stepped through the doors, the room hushed again. Conversations faded into stillness. The priest stood near the altar, holding the same ceremonial book as before, his expression unsure. Adam stood in the same place he had been that morning. Alone now. Still. I walked forward slowly, past friends, past family, past confusion. When I reached the front, I turned to face them all. There won't be a wedding, I said, my voice loud enough to fill the space, but steady, calm. But I need to say something before I leave this place. All eyes were on me. I stood here earlier believing I knew the man beside me. I believed in a future we'd planned together, in the love we had built. But love, it turns out, can't survive in silence. And silence was all I was given when I needed truth. Adam's face twisted slightly, but he didn't interrupt. I'm not angry at any one moment, I continued. I'm grieving the 1,000 tiny lies that brought us to this one. The questions I didn't think to ask. The answers he never thought to offer. I turned to him. Adam. He looked at me, and the weight in his eyes was unbearable. You should have trusted me enough to tell me the worst parts of your story. You should have known that honesty doesn't destroy love, it defines it. I'm sorry, he whispered, but I held up a hand. This moment isn't about me. Or you. It's about a child you walked away from. A child who still wonders why his father is a stranger. He took a step forward. I want to change that. I want to know him. I want to be a father. His words rang clear, and though I could feel their sincerity, I didn't move toward him. You have a long road to earn that title, I said softly. It starts with showing up, not just today, but every day after. Then, something happened I didn't expect. Adam turned to the crowd. To all of you. I failed. Not just Elizabeth. Not just Lauren. I failed myself. I spent years hiding behind fear. I abandoned a woman who loved me. I ignored a son I never met. And today, I nearly pulled someone else into that lie. His voice wavered, but he didn't stop. I can't undo the past. But I can face it. And I intend to. The chapel was silent. The tension didn't vanish, but something inside it shifted. And I realized something too. I wasn't the broken one in this story. I was the one strong enough to walk away. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. The girl who had stepped into the chapel hours earlier wearing a dress full of dreams was gone. What remained was someone different, someone quieter, perhaps, but infinitely clearer. As I turned from the altar, my hands no longer trembling, I found my gaze drawn not to Adam, not to the empty place where vows had died, but to Lauren. She stood at the back of the chapel, still, reserved, as if she feared she had said too much already. Her presence, once a rupture in the day, now seemed like the only grounded thing in the room. As I approached her, every step felt deliberate, not like a retreat, but like the beginning of something else. The whispers around us faded. No one dared interrupt. When I reached her, she opened her mouth slightly, as if to speak, but I didn't wait for her to form the words. I looked into her eyes and said, I want to meet him. She blinked. Noah? I nodded. Yes. She looked down for a moment, her expression tightening. You don't have to do this. You owe nothing. This was your wedding day, Elizabeth. I know, I said. But it was his life. And it still is. If there's a child in the middle of this, I can't pretend he doesn't exist. I won't. Her eyes met mine again, and for a brief moment, all the tension between us softened. We were no longer two women divided by a man's silence, we were simply two women who had both been left to navigate the damage he created. He's 5, she said quietly. He loves to draw. He's shy with strangers but not with animals. And lately, he's been asking a lot of questions. About fathers. About why his is never around. I swallowed hard. I hadn't expected those details to hurt the way they did. Bring him, I said. Tomorrow. I want to meet him. She nodded slowly, as if afraid this moment might vanish if she moved too quickly. I will. And just like that, something shifted. Not a resolution. Not a solution. But a beginning. Behind us, the chapel remained full, but no one followed. No one interrupted. Even Adam didn't move. Maybe he knew that any words now would only echo against a truth too loud to be ignored. As I walked out beside Lauren, I felt the air change. The doors shut behind us with a soft, final sound, not an end, but a seal. I wasn't running from anything. I was stepping into something else entirely. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know what meeting Noah would stir in me. But I knew this much, I didn't want to be another adult who turned away from the truth because it was inconvenient. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want this story to end with pain, but with something unexpected, something real. The next morning arrived quietly. The air was still, as if the world itself was pausing to see what I would do. I woke early, not from rest but from the kind of tension that lingers behind the eyes. My wedding dress hung untouched where I had left it, still perfect in its fabric, now hollow in meaning. I didn't look at it again. Instead, I pulled on a simple sweater and jeans, tied my hair back, and waited. Lauren arrived just after 10 o'clock in the morning. Her car pulled into the driveway with a slow certainty, and I watched from the front steps as she stepped out, then opened the rear door. He came out holding her hand, a small boy with a mop of dark hair and a cautious expression that made something in my chest pull tight. Noah. He was smaller than I had imagined, but he stood with a quietness that reminded me immediately of Adam. There was something observant in the way he looked around, not afraid, but careful. As Lauren guided him toward me, I felt more nervous than I had all of yesterday. This wasn't a confrontation. This was something more delicate. More important. Hi, Noah, I said softly. He looked up at me, his eyes wide but curious. Hi, he answered, barely above a whisper. I crouched down so I wouldn't tower over him. I'm Elizabeth. I was hoping I could meet you today. He nodded, eyes flickering between me and his mother. Lauren knelt beside him. Remember what I told you? This is someone who wanted to meet you because she thinks you're important. He tilted his head, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small drawing, scribbled in crayon, lines barely contained on the page. I made this, he said, holding it out to me. I took it gently. It was a picture of a house, a sun in the corner, a figure standing beside a child. This is beautiful, I told him. Did you draw this for me? He shrugged. I just wanted to show you what our house looks like. Lauren smiled softly but didn't speak. We went inside, and for the next hour, the three of us sat together. Noah asked questions in the innocent way only children can, about my house, about the plants in the window, about whether I had a dog. I didn't push him, didn't mention Adam, didn't try to stitch anything together that wasn't ready. I just listened. And the more I listened, the more I realized how much of his world had been shaped by silence. When Lauren and I found a quiet moment in the kitchen, she looked at me differently than before, less guarded. I didn't know how this would go, she admitted. Me neither, I said. But I'm glad I didn't stay away. She nodded. So many people have. Even before the truth came out. I looked at Noah through the doorway, watching him run his finger along the edge of a bookshelf, whispering softly to himself. He's going to have questions, Lauren. And not just now. For years. I know, she said. I'm not sure where I fit into any of this, I admitted. But I know I don't want to pretend he's invisible. And I won't protect Adam from the consequences of what he left behind. Neither will I. We sat in silence, two women connected not by friendship, but by something deeper, a shared wound, a shared responsibility, and now, maybe, a shared choice. And for the first time since the chapel, I allowed myself to imagine that something good might grow from everything that had fallen apart. The months that followed didn't unfold like a storybook ending. There was no triumphant music, no perfect closure. What came instead was slower, more uncertain, but undeniably real. After the day I met Noah, I kept in touch with Lauren, not often, not in ways that demanded anything, but just enough to let things settle between us. Our conversations shifted from awkward to honest, and then something else took root: respect. Adam didn't vanish again. He didn't try to fix everything with one grand gesture. Instead, he did what he had never done before: he showed up. Quietly, consistently. He began therapy, not just for guilt, but for the silence that had lived in him for years. He reached out to Lauren with humility. He asked to meet Noah. She didn't say yes immediately. But eventually, she agreed to small visits, always on her terms, always cautious. And when Noah asked who Adam was, Lauren told him, "That's someone who's trying to learn how to be a dad." The first time Adam held Noah, I wasn't there. But Lauren told me about it. She said he cried. Not because of guilt. Not because of the past. But because for the first time, he saw the life he had almost missed, and it changed something in him. As for me, I didn't rush to redefine my own life. I didn't move cities. I didn't throw myself into distractions. I stayed still, gave myself permission to feel everything. The grief. The loss. The strange hope. And through that stillness, I realized I hadn't lost as much as I thought. I had dodged a future built on omission. I had faced the truth, even when it shattered the fairy tale. Lauren and I started having coffee once a month. At first, it was just updates about Noah, about how she was managing. But with time, we laughed more. We spoke of our pasts with a softness that only comes when pain is no longer the loudest voice in the room. We never called each other friends. But we were something close. Something steady. One spring afternoon, a year after the wedding that never was, I visited a park where Lauren and Noah were spending the day. He ran up to me without hesitation, held out a picture he'd drawn. It was of three figures under a blue sky. A woman with brown hair. A woman with blonde hair. And a small boy between them, holding both bare hands. "Is that me in the middle?" I asked him. He nodded. "That's us." I looked at Lauren. She smiled. I had walked away from an altar expecting loss. What I found instead was a beginning. A bond forged not by romance, but by truth. A boy who deserved a better story. Two women who chose to heal. And a man learning, finally, to be more than what he had been. The day I was supposed to say I do didn't end in vows. But it became the day I said yes, to truth, to growth, to something far more lasting than love based on secrets. Sometimes, the altar isn't where a story ends. Sometimes, it's where something much more honest begins.